we go.
Hi, everyone. It's Annette. Sorry I'm late.
No worries. Welcome, Annette. We have Rosanna and Jeff and myself, Tom Pitts, CorpU, and Gina Palmisano from CorpU.
I got a message
Thank
from
you. Nice to
Marcus.
meet you.
He's trying to join here, but having trouble. He's visiting from Germany and just having a little trouble with the office phone. So
he can't get on.
Try and coach him. Yeah, he's just having trouble getting the outside line on the office phone. So yes, he's visiting. I'm going to try and get things through that. Okay.
So Annette, we were just getting started, so you didn't miss much.
And Annette is, it's, first of all, has been one of the, along with Marcus and Brian, have really been the architects behind the whole process that we've utilized to refresh the strategy. So it's one thing, and then I think in that also you have a keen interest in the change management elements of rolling out the strategy and getting the engagement of our associates to take hold of that strategy and bring it to life. Is that a fair way to characterize?
Excellent. Thank you, Jeff.
Okay.
And Annette, I had shared earlier that we've been working with the Gore teams. Gina supports 3 programs currently. Oh, wait.
Hello, that's Marcus now. Sorry for the late.
Marcus.
Jeff, thank you.
Okay, yeah, sure, thanks. Yeah, thanks for joining.
Hello, Marcus. Welcome.
Hello, thank you.
And Marcus is my counterpart. So whereas I'm the supply chain leader for consumer garments, Marcus is the supply chain leader for our technical garments, which is like firefighters and military and law enforcement and so forth. And as I was saying a minute ago, Marcus, you along with Annette and Brian have really been the architects of the process that we've utilized for refreshing the strategy.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
And this is Tom Pitts from CorpU. We were just sharing, Marcus, that we're already working with several Gore teams. We're working with Mariella McEnroe's learning teams, and Gina actually supports 3 programs, your Leadership Core, your Leadership Essentials, and a Product Specialist training program. So your teams have embraced our platform in this collaborative way of learning, but we've, through customer has drawn us into this change transformation, strategy acceleration world. We're actually leveraging our platform to actually structure what we call these strategy sprints or these change transformation sprints. But if you can envision, I was just ready to share a customer example. We work with the team at Agilent, and they were consolidating 3 global supply chains into one. So they had this one Agilent initiative that they needed to get across, thousands of folks of how they're going to change the way they're doing business. And typically, so the president of this group, Hendrik Jensen, typically would do a town hall meeting where he'd had a few of his folks on his team where they would present, hey, here's where we are, and here's where we're going, and why, what the market conditions are, and why we need to change the way we're doing business, and start sharing that information. And of course, you might have hundreds of folks in an auditorium and maybe hundreds more that are logged in. And of course, they ask, any questions, and a few lone hands would go up and they answer those questions, and people are sent off to go off and execute. What we've done is we've taken that message, and that's typically day one, where we're communicating out kind of the vision and the direction. And then the next few days, we're going a little bit deeper through the platform, where we're structuring, we're following what we call the learning of science of how people learn and absorb information. So it's in small chunks, and it's spread out over time to give folks an opportunity to kind of make sense of it, internalize it, react to it, and start bringing up maybe some challenges that they see that might get in the way, and get folks to, get your associates to start collaborating around that, to really share, here's what's happening in our world. Have you thought about this? And getting your leaders to actually engage in that conversation and recognize that, you're going to hear some things from the, from the field that'll help you really tighten up your strategy initiative. So typically these are structured in a way where it's spread out over a week or two, no more than 30 minutes a day, 20 to 30 minutes a day of activities, where these would be maybe a short video watch of some of your leaders shaping out the strategy initiative and the direction, and then giving folks maybe a reading for a deeper understanding around the why behind that. Maybe doing an assessment of, are we capable of pulling this off, and then start surfacing some of those barriers or hurdles that people might see that are in the way. And I know when we look at when you're trying to roll out a strategy, I don't know if I know Rosanna's not online, but Annette and Marcus, are you able to see my screen?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So this is over on the left, we have this strategy initiative that we want to roll out, and we want to get over to the right where folks are actually going off and executing. Well, if you follow the research, the McKinsey articles, the HBR, IBM, most strategy initiatives fall short, and it really comes down to these 6 major hurdles. Do the folks really understand, the why behind this, and why now, and where are we going? Are they bought in? Can we do this? Should we be doing this? Do they know what levers to pull with their teams? Are they capable of pulling those levers? Do they have the freedom to do that? And then really are they committed? So we're really going to pull people along to get at every one of these, where we want to draw out from your teams kind of the intentionality behind this, and make sure that they're bought in, and would surface any barriers, because typically, what Hendrik shared with us, he would normally do his town hall meeting, he'd do several web sessions, he'd hop on a plane, and he'd travel from region to region to region around the world. It would take him about 4 months telling the same story to each of the business units. We were able to deliver their strategy sprint initiative in 10 days, and they reached thousands of folks. But the engagement, and I'll actually share this with you. I'm going to jump over to this other example. So this is Hendrik here. So this is in the early days. So this is day 1, where Hendrik is sharing the vision of where we're going, and you can see there's 4 short little activities, a 3-minute video watch, a reading, another reading, and then we're going to tee up some questions and get people to start leaning in and sharing their insight. Did we lose something?
Tom, we have what's visible now is the I don't even know what you call it, but the other view that the sort of control panel view. Yeah,
I love it.
There you go.
Love
now
technology.
Okay.
I could see it on my screen. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
So this is what it looks like in the platform, and this would be branded, of course, to the Gore colors. And then we would have your leaders really shaping out the vision of the strategy. And then as folks begin to go through this, and we start asking for their insight, their perspective, that's when you see the power of this. And if you kind of, I don't know if you can see it over to the right, but the third one down, Hendrik is leaning in based on some of the post that had started to unfold, and you see, people are swarming around that, and you get that dialogue going. So it was interesting. Annette, are you okay?
Yeah, I got kicked out. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
They were just sharing as the further activities in this day, the dialogue begins to unfold, and this third one down on the right is Henrik, the president of this group, jumped into this conversation. And we had a really interesting one. One of these brave VPs in their organization started to share some of his concerns. Basically, it's been a lot of realignment, reorganizations, more than they've ever seen. They're just trying to get their head around, what the organization looks like. And then Henrik jumped in. You're bringing up, some very good points, and quite honestly, don't have all the answers right now. But they promised to get those back, and then that VP, thanking them. It's really refreshing to have a senior leadership team be available to listen to the concerns of people on the front lines. So and then the conversations really opened up after that, because they knew this was a safe area for them to really share what's happening on the front lines and really help shape the strategy initiative moving forward. And I know Jeff and Rosanna have been on our platform, and I'm going to try to see if I can show you what this looks like here.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, I can see we got we got commitments from a few associates who to try to be active and sort of a bit provocative, right, and to try and stir up some of this conversation, and that seemed really. I did that for sure, and then I had a couple of sourcing managers who, like Jason Bowman, for example, Mikhail Sendelbach, did this, and I found that to be really effective, is to get those commitments in advance from a few associates that seem pretty willing and interested in the topic, and just ask them to really try to trigger some of that conversation. And I was pretty.
You mean when we were doing the actual engagement, Jeff, when we were on, like in the process, or after the fact?
Before. I reached out to a few associates before and said, hey, and when we're running this program, are you willing to make the commitment to, spend some time to trigger some of these threads? And they did it.
Yeah.
It seemed like it was really effective.
It did.
So Jeff, when did you use it? Did I miss it? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I think, wasn't Ashley Burkhart part of that too, as early on?
Actually,
I know she was part of it.
Yeah. Ashley and Casey were both, and for benefit of Tom and Gina. So this was primarily a procurement program that we did. That was sort of our target audience. But we got some cross-functional associates, two of which were in sales. And those threads that were engaged with by those two associates from sales, Ashley and Casey, they were brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant. We got some great stuff out of that.
So was it a short-term thing, or like why are you doing it anymore, or was it just for a piece of work?
It's a sprint, right? So as Tom was describing, you have a cohort of participants who go through the sprint together and have kind of a curriculum, like a daily curriculum of activities to go through. The commitment is about 20 to 30 minutes per day. And I think what I had envisioned for this was probably 2 1-week sprints, and whether they would be back to back or not, I'm not sure. So we might do one sprint, for a week, 1 month, and then take a month break, and then come back for the second or something like that. If you structure the cohorts in such a way that you have that cross-functional participation, then you don't have to get everyone in the whole, all the associates to go through it together, but you can have these cohorts of groups structured so that you have representation from supply chain, from sales, from the business unit, from the innovation teams, and do that in such a way that so we could do like a largely TOF group, but with some participants from COF or from footwear or something like that as an example, to try and create some diversity of the population of associates that are going through together. That's kind of the vision that I had when I reached out to Tom.
And real quick, because I want to make sure I'm thinking about this right. With the outcome that they have a more deeper understanding of the strategy and they can help others to understand, and then this goes away, and then just business as usual. Is that the idea?
No. Good question. So the idea is, yes, to get shared understanding, the shared vision, but coming out of this, these folks are going to make a commitment of what they're going to do. And then we use the platform to keep those teams connected and engaged throughout the year. So we have a couple different vehicles. One we call a pulse check. So think about maybe 3 months out, 6 months out, 9 months out. We may pull this team back together, this cohort group, and check in. So coming out of this strategy sprint, you said you're going to try this. How's that going? What's working? What's not working? What's getting in the way? And we continue to share from each other. We also have what's called a ping, P-I-N-G technology. So if you wanted to get at an answer quickly, you're able to very easily construct a question with 4 or 5 answers, the radio button answers, send it out through the platform, and then dynamically you can watch as people get their emails with this hot link and you want to get an answer around a particular issue, and people are weighing in, this thing tabulates real time on the platform. So the idea is, the folks that go through this will become a community of practice. So you may have several different cohort groups, 30 to 50 people going through together, but we may have several hundred folks in this community of practice who continue to, now we may get some great ideas from cohort 3. Well, we want to pull that up into the community of practice page, the landing page. Let me jump back to that. So this would be the kind of the community of practice landing page. And I was inside here, this Valor Strategy Activation Sprint. That's when I dove into, my smaller cohort group. But here you can see, here's the ping technology. We want to understand which priority you think is most important for our organization. And then these tabulate as folks are giving their responses. We can feature content, and then we can structure this landing page however it makes sense. We have it in this tile format, but if you can envision pulling in some of those best practices as folks begin to share, now that I'm trying to apply this and I'm struggling around this, or hey, this worked, we want to keep pulling back those great ideas onto this front landing page to share with everyone. And you also have a dialogue with this entire group, as well as, so there's 1,064 members of this entire group, but I may be part of a 30 to 50 person cohort sprint. You may have a number of sprints. That makes sense? Does that answer your question?
It does. And can I have one follow-up? And I
Sure.
one follow-up, and then I will be silent. Jeff,
no, please don't.
Jeff, how much of that did you use in the effort you were just talking about? Did you do the whole year long? How did you do that?
No, we didn't. We had it was a little bit different. Our intent was different. Our intent was, although we probably had a missed opportunity here now, having heard Tom explain. But our intent was basically just to roll out the training. And then we,
as a pilot.
Tom came in and, we reviewed the metrics from the session and we closed it down.
So that's the other piece of what I'm going to flip over to this. So we have an online dashboard. So as your cohort teams are going through their sprint and they begin, say, answering questions, maybe an assessment, a survey, and they begin their collaboration, well, these charts and graphs begin to build. And we're measuring for around, are they engaged in the content? Are they participating in discussions? Are they collaborating? You can see over here, so we have a number of folks that are actively collaborating. Then we have a smaller group that they're posting information, but they're not necessarily engaging back and forth. And then we have folks that are a little more silent. They're reading all the posts, but not actively engaged. We benchmark when we do a lot of our learning programs. We can benchmark against any other organizations, but you wouldn't see that in your strategy sprint. So the other is, are they advocates? Do they believe in this? So we're measuring for that. We're measuring for, value, net promoter score. Do they understand the content? So not a kind of a self-check, yes, I understand it, but we're using machine learning and AI, and we've written algorithms to actually analyze the conversations that unfold on the platform using natural language processing. So are the folks using the language that we're trying to teach them? Are they using it in the right context? What's the sentiment analysis of these conversations? Are they positive? Are they negative? So we'll provide back at the end of this some pretty deep analytics around, are your folks, are they committed? Are they engaged? Do they understand it? What kind of barriers do they see that are in the way? What are some potential solutions around these barriers? And then depending on kind of the descriptors that you give us of each of the folks that are in the cohort, we can, slice the data up. So we may get, hey, these folks are in this particular, business unit or this functional team or this region, or they've been with the company this long. We can begin to slice and dice the data to see, hey, it looks like, maybe the folks in the Southwest here are struggling around, this particular issue. Let's go find out why. So it really is we're trying to bring you some insights into the hearts and the minds of these folks as they're going through these journeys. And Gina, this is your world, so you're welcome.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm happy to jump in for a second here as well. So this is, I love this dashboard, and it's really what we kind of consider at this point sort of our first tier analytics. So it's available to you real time. So as people are going through the sprint, when they hit 70%, they'll start to get an end of course survey, and it'll pop up again for them at 90%, and then they'll have access to it throughout the course. So what we really love to do is use this as kind of our barometer. But then additionally, when we're looking to design, in particular, our change management, our strategy sprints, a really important thing that we'll do is we'll do a design session with you guys. So I would come in and I would sit down with you, and we would really almost kind of reverse engineer our process. So we would think first about what are the outcomes that we're really striving for with this group. So both in terms of business outcomes as well as the outcomes for the participants themselves. And then we would make sure that in the design that we're building in, we're able to directly link and be able to see those outcomes. And so we do an additional level of analytics dependent on what types of information we can pull in and how deeply we can get into those pieces. So we can do things that you'll see, an organizational network analysis, for example, so being able to show you how connected people are within the cohort, or a thematic analysis. So when we have larger groups that are going through discussion forums, what we're able to do is be able to look at those and pull out, these are the top themes of what people are talking about. And those are just some examples, but I think it's really important when you're kind of thinking about the process to recognize that as we're designing, we're designing with the outcomes in mind to make sure that we're really at the end able to surface out to you pieces that are really valuable to you and to additional, leaders within Gore.
So what this ends up, we're able to bring to the table. So we'll co-create the strategy sprints that Jeff described. So these are fast. They're typically a week. So we may be looking at maybe 2 different weeks. And our mission is to really deliver a minimum effective dose. So what information do these folks need to really get them to understand and to be able to act on this? And then we're tracking all this with the analytics. So we'll provide you back not only that real-time dashboard, but Gina's team will provide back an actionable insight report. And we'll share with you some of the themes of those conversations, that organizational network analysis. We can see exactly who's connecting with whom, who's leaning in, who's pulling this cohort along. They're your change champions. And then to Annette's question earlier, we have, we call it a strategy wall in this case, but that community of practice where we're going to keep that these groups connected and engaged and continue to learn from each other as they're executing on the strategy. So again, it's these 30 minutes a day. Typically we'll deliver these, and then there'll be a capstone maybe at the end of the week where we're going to pull the full cohort together with the leaders and really unpack all those conversations that happened and what it is that we were able to uncover and what we need to be doing going forward. And then here's what Gina was talking about. So, how engaged are these folks? Do they believe in it? Do they actually understand it? Did they surface any barriers? Are they, do they make their commitment? Some of the themes of the conversations as they unfold, and actually, who are the change champions that you can tap into. It's interesting when we do these reports. We'll provide you all of the names of the folks and how they connected, but there's always you have like 5 top names and 4 of them, so I can understand that. There's always there's someone in there that's very networked, very tightly networked throughout your organization that may be a little more reserved, maybe not as vocal in a conference room meeting, and very thoughtful about what they're going to post on the platform, but very highly respected in the organization. So it's interesting when we do these that we uncover some folks that maybe aren't as visible in your organization. Any other questions? I guess it would be good if we shared with you what this costs.
Marcus, before the Marcus, I felt like there was you had tried to get in a few minutes ago. Did your question get addressed?
Me? No, I'm just listening. So I wasn't. No, all good.
Okay.
Thanks,
Got
Jeff.
it. Great. Thanks.
Thanks for checking.
So how we price these out? So we'll have a license for the platform. So in this case, we're estimating about 300 associates, and for a year to have access to the platform. And you can drive as much custom Gore content as you would like to these 300 folks. So, don't think this is one and done. There may be other initiatives that you want to roll out. So you have the platform, and then the cost for us to actually develop the sprints. So we're looking at potentially 2 one-week sprints, about 6 hours worth of content with video. Any questions on that?
Did I miss, what does video mean? 6 hours of content with video?
Sure. So we would be video interviewing some of your leaders to embed into the sprint. So to really share the vision and the direction.
So there, Annette, what I was thinking, we could reach out to someone like Lutz or Michelle Lee, maybe one or two associates in Asia, like maybe Grace, and ask them to help us tell the story of the strategy from their perspective and from their from their business point of view, or from their particular regional point of view, something like that, to add some outside of supply chain perspective, and help use that as a way to sort of create the pull to engage some of the other associates also outside of supply chain. If it's only supply chain telling the story, and we're trying to tell it to those out, in the cross functions, who better to do so than other associates that are, leading.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
And so can you also, in that, because is it possible to use, you would say cross-culturally, is it possible to use in this functionality like subtitles, like in-language subtitles, or is any of that available?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that was cool. That Tom. So in the Clarity meeting last week, right? It was super powerful to hear associates speaking in their own native language.
Yeah.
And really advocating passionately for the content, and then we were reading the subtitles. It was really amazing. In a lot of cases, I wasn't even reading the subtitles. I was just looking at their faces and their, their animation of their voice and so on. It was super powerful. Yeah.
It was. And we lose some of it when we make everyone talk in English. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
You're right. I was listening to the Germans, and then I read the English subtitles, and it was only half as good as the original.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've delivered these globally, and it's interesting. We did a rollout for Coca-Cola's Operations 2020, their strategy initiative, and I think we did more in China than we did anywhere else. So it's
I would
you would be used to that.
Yeah, I've worked with a group before who rolled out to 12,000 folks across their whole organization, and we translated into 9 different languages. So actually what we ended up doing there was putting everything in like a local language and English, so that you could have some of that cross-pollination in cohorts, but still give people the chance to work in their native language as well. So I think it depends on we can take a look at that. We can talk through that, and I think some of the things that Tom was talking about too, with the implementation checks in between, and I think there's a couple different things that we could maybe add into the picture here. I think there's a good baseline for this slide for what Tom's projecting, but there might be some additional ideas that we can consider as well.
Any other questions we can help answer? I'll share one other. So we work with Boston Scientific, and they were rolling out, they called it the Big Six. So it's like 3 new technologies inside their supply chain: control tower and inventory management, and I think the planning tool. And then they had some process changes. Well, they pulled in, to your point, Jeff, they pulled in folks that from sales and marketing, from finance, from legal, that don't live in supply chain, but they're working with them. And I was listening in on one of these sprints, and they were, that particular week, we were talking about inventory. So the senior VP that we work with, the sponsor, claims that they're addicted to inventory. Nobody wants to be out of stock of anything. And but they had to understand, hey, we have to segment our customers, and some people are going to have to wait, and so they're. But the other thing is they're in the medical devices business, so there's time sensitivity on their products, and they were writing off to the tune of about $100 million a year on products that either expire or new products come out and they're replaced. So in this, discussion on day 5, after they were going through the whole explanation around inventory, the person from sales and marketing said, wait a minute, she said, we hear this number, writing off $100 million, and that's the course of doing business. She said, are you telling us you have a sight line into these products of when, they're going to be replaced? Or when they said, yes. I said, well, why don't you work with our team? We'll proactively reach out to some of our larger customers and, let them know, here's what's happening to these particular products, and we'll move some of them. Well, it was the conditions in the environment just to have those conversations. That they did this separately outside of the sprint. They set up this program, and their target is, hey, if we can knock 10% off of this, inventory write-off, we can go out and buy a company. So they would have never had these conversations. So there's some of the things that'll probably unfold as these folks are going through this experience. It's pretty fun.
So, and I guess what I'm thinking about, and that was going to be my question, Jeff, to you. So because you had the forward view of this, how much of this, so one of the things that we learned very early on in engagement, wherever we do it, in whatever company, right, is that engagement is good, but if we're already hearing that stuff and we're just creating another forum in which people are already expressing the same things they've already been talking about, it will just frustrate them further. So this will only work if we feel like, in my view, to what you just said, if we're not hearing this, or if we haven't tried this, or, you know what I mean, or if some way we feel like we're limited by the conversations. So Jeff, in bringing this forward, do you think that we are limited, that we're not vetting everything that we could be vetting, or this is another way this is a way to do it, or do you think we're not kind of listening to each other and this is just another way to do it? What are you thinking there?
I think we have a couple of issues. One is, it is a physical challenge, right, to bring everybody up to speed across regionally and cross-functionally, especially, and on the strategy and what's different about this. How is this strategy different than the last version? What's new and what's important for me as an associate to understand about the strategy. And so I think we have a physical challenge to do that, and we can do it in the way that we normally do it, with the cascade and, or traveling around, and we can do video, we can do web conferences to avoid the travel, but still it's a one-to-one sort of cascading rollout that misses the opportunity to really engage over a period of time with a broader range of associates that are in, that you could construct into a cohort. So that's one thing. But then I think the other thing is this discussion is going to lead to, I believe it will lead to ways of thinking that are going to be, different. Some of it we will have heard. So we had an ideation session in one of our previous experiences, and some of the ideas were those we had heard before, absolutely. But there were some gems that hadn't come up before that I thought were really powerful. Of the 8 or 10 that really good ones that came up, we had to make some choices, and we only moved forward with 1 or 2, which had kind of a downside because some of the associates were really passionate about their stuff, and we had to go back to them and say, we can't support this. Here's the reasons why. It's largely prioritization. It's a good idea, just we can't go forward with it. So there's that too. That becomes kind of an issue to manage with the associates that do participate and do come up with really interesting ideas. So I think there's a lot there's a lot to be gained, but there's a couple of downsides that we have to work through as well. But even the downside, I would say, would be better than having not engaged at all. You know, I mean, there's something to be gained, even if you're telling somebody that, sorry, we're not going to go through with this really cool idea that you came up with.
At least just recognize, like you said, it was a great idea. Unfortunately, we can't do that. The other piece of it, I think, is, your organization is very collaborative, and I think that's why they took to this platform. But the nice thing is you may have those face-to-face meetings and a lot of conversation going on. Well, we capture all that. So, which is where the analytics, I think, are going to help, is to give you an opportunity to actually kind of sift through and find those gems pretty easily. So I think we can probably provide you back a lot more information that you probably capture a lot now. I think you're going to capture a lot more this way.
Yeah, and it is just really cool I found it really cool to just follow the threads and just see what people are thinking and talking about, and sometimes jumping in and sometimes not, sometimes just sort of letting it organically just go. It's pretty, I found it pretty interesting.
So this is Rosanna. I'm in the same room with Marcus now. I was driving.
Oh.
So one other thing I think we should be thinking about, and it has nothing to do with the content, or, well, it does, but I think there's a level of engagement, diversity, relevancy that I think is also embedded in this type of communication and engagement. So historically, the workforce is changing. So traditionally, everybody had to meet in the boardroom, and now everybody has to get on a plane and go see somebody. But the people that we're hiring, their level of engagement is entirely different than what mine would have been early on in my career. It's very digital. And I think we can't ignore that component of their needs as in the workforce. So, whether it's this or whatever, I think there is a norm that we can't ignore. So I like what you're showing us, from that aspect as well, which has really nothing to do with the content, but more about the experience.
Yeah, the platform itself.
And I think on top of it, a huge benefit is the guaranteed consistency of content and communication. And I'm just thinking, we have spent a lot of energy in the previous years around making sure we all use the same slides. We have worked with the slides, but at the end of the day, it's always individuals delivering content and message. And just due to the background we all have, culture, education, etc., there's always a tweak to it, and it's going to be a different message. So I like the consistency here with in a global environment. And I really like the analytics that we can see here, because I think that has a huge potential for us, where we know some of the key influencers and the usual suspects that we would have on for many things when it comes to our strategy. But I think here we probably can identify some other individuals that we normally would miss, and we could identify here or really adjust our approach. So I think my brain got quite crazy with what we can do here. So I'm trying to caution myself, because we can spin off a lot of work here for all of us that goes far beyond the initial intent. So it is dangerous what you're showing here. It's really interesting.
That happens.
Yeah.
That's
just
go ahead.
No, I was just going to chime in with one thing. I know that Jeff was on the line when we were talking about, I was actually just visiting one of your colleagues in Phoenix, Jill Gargano, who uses the platform for Leadership Core and Leadership Essentials. And one of the things that we were talking about is that, it's not something that we think is ever going to 100% replace that powerful face-to-face connection, but it really can build on that. So if you have all of these pieces where people have already experienced it on the CorpU platform, when you do get in front of them, you can have a very different conversation at a much higher level, deeper dive conversation versus, just sort of getting the message out to them, leaving and thinking, okay, I hope they got it. I think they understood. I think they're bought in, but I'm not really sure. Instead, you can already be be charged with a lot of that information and a lot of the pieces and a lot of the questions, and you can really dive into very specific pieces when you do get to that face-to-face, or you do end up, you know, on a web conference with people. So it makes everything faster. I absolutely agree with you, Marcus. The consistency is key in terms of, you know, really being able to get that message out to everyone in the same way at the same time, and then be able to have that crowdsourced information come back to you. So it's really powerful to drive it along. It's, you know, and it's a supplement to what is already being done.
So Jeff, I'll thank you and your team. I'll circle back with you. I have to jump for a top of the hour meeting, but
yep, no problem.
Just want to make sure we have all your questions answered before we jump.
I think we're good.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. Really appreciate the engagement here with the Gore team, as well as Tom and Gina. So. Yeah, thanks very much.
I especially appreciate you coming in off a red eye.
I know.
You're my hero. I couldn't even talk.
All right, great. Okay, thanks.
Everyone, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.